SexyHackers.com.
Once upon a time, there were a few young girls with a passion for literature, a love of the written word, an inspired infatuation of... Okay, fine. We were a bunch of super dorks with no friends. We spent all day hiding out in our rooms, reading books that were maybe a little inappropriate.
Hello and welcome to Who Let Me Read This, the podcast where a group of avid readers get together to discuss the books of our childhood, how it's colored our view, and how much we're going to eventually spend on therapy.
How much more?
How much more? Due to their incredibly inappropriate nature, and today really takes the cake. Today we are going to be reviewing Judy Blume's Blubber, a delightful book of my childhood, and I think of many others that I stumbled across at a garage sale when I was young and blacked it out, fortunately. But yeah, I think a lot of people read this as a kid, so I'm really excited to talk about it. But before we dive in.
Yes, before we dive in, excuse me. We haven't done a content warning in a few episodes, but I feel like this book really warranted it. Mm-hmm. So just as a heads up, this book deals heavily with intense bullying involving children, with a heavy focus on body shaming, which of course we'll be addressing in our discussion, including descriptions of specific situations that are pretty upsetting and terrible. So just as a forewarning, make sure you're in kind of the right headspace to listen, because we are going to be diving into some intense bullying discussion.
So take care of yourself. Yes, most importantly. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And actually, that's a perfect way to kick things off and introduce who is discussing this with us. So our content warning expert, I guess.
As much as you can be an expert in content warnings.
Professional knitter.
I just like to write them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And an advocate, Miss Sarah Wallisch. Hello.
Hello.
Hey. Next to you, directly on my right, professional outrager at these books. Yes. Yeah. Performer in the Milwaukee community and thrower of most books. Andrea specifically told me to get this book out of her house. Yes. Miss Andrea Roedel-Schroeder.
Hello. Hello.
And our very special guest today, bringing in a brand new friend to the studio, Miss Bianca Brandolino.
Hello.
Yay.
Hi.
As part of the Milwaukee artist community, and I hear actually that you make some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah,
too.
so I actually have an Etsy called Leaf and Luna, and I've done some shows at kind of immersive night carnivals in Milwaukee. But my brand's called Leaf and Luna, and I specialize in handmade gemstone jewelry. But also I make cosplay jewelry for Howl's Moving Castle, which is my favorite film of all time.
Yes.
So I make the earrings and necklaces that Howl wears, and I'm currently working on doing more Studio Ghibli products, I guess.
That's some cool stuff. I don't know how to make things. My mom had to get me a special low heat glue gun as a child, and I think that pretty much sums up my crafting abilities.
I made too much growing up, so too many things going on.
The universe is in balance. You made all the things that she didn't make.
I create nothing. Oh, goodness gracious. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm super excited to talk about this book because when I think of Judy Blume, I do not think of anything really controversial. I, thought of like Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing and Super Fudge, like fun books.
I always think of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of her best known books.
Yep. Almost confusing.
Yeah. It was confusing because I think that's not how period protection menstrual stuff works anymore. There's no belts.
Yeah.
Just to clarify for dudes, there's no belt situation.
Yeah, by the time we were reading it, it was like everything had changed in the world of menstrual health. So we
very different.
We're like, you had to you had to hook it onto your belt.
No, that's
you put it on the. It doesn't go on the outside of your pants.
Oh, but that's I think a whole separate episode.
Anyway.
So we're gonna kick off Blubber. So this starts off with we meet our I'm gonna go protagonist. Jill. We keep finding that in this podcast, that our
Yeah.
protagonists are kind of jerks.
Yeah.
And her classmates, Caroline and Wendy, and the poor girl they've decided to pick on during her report on whales, Linda. So the book kicks off with Linda, she's up in front of the class giving her report on whales, and all of the girls in the classroom decide to start like whispering and snickering and like passing notes and making fun of her.
It's
Goodness.
rough. It is. It's a weird choice that her report on whales seems to primarily focus on Flint Sirs, who are the people that like strip the blubber off of whales and do things with it in the industry, which is not really about whales so much it is killing whales.
Whalers, absolutely.
That was my only like critique of this situation is like, why are you spending the whole report talking about the people that essentially kill the whales versus the actual whales? But you do you, Linda. You still don't deserve to get tortured.
There was nothing in her report about baleen. That's all I want to hear about when it comes to whales. It's how they eat.
Oh, I was like, what is that?
They have like
Little
hairs,
Yeah, it's like the
kinda,
hair
like
tendrils
hairs
that
instead
they-
of teeth. And so they suck in a whole bunch of water.
Yeah, that's how
and then
they
they
hold all
like
the krill.
push the water back out through their hair teeth, and the krill gets stuck in it. So then they eat the krill.
It's like the term hair teeth.
Yeah, it's a little nightmare fuel, a little
Yep.
bit.
I love
Cat?
it.
Oh,
I mean, it's great.
Like I just always thought it was so cool.
Horrifying.
so they're joking around and they're teasing her, and their teacher lightly acknowledges this. I mean, what
They're
teacher
like,
doesn't
"Yes,
know what's
yes."
going on? Like you're making the kid do a report on whales, and people are in the back like snickering and pointing. You know what's going on as a teacher, right? Yeah, and you're not going to address it.
Did they choose their animals, or were
think
they
they did.
assigned?
I think they did.
Okay.
Because they talk about how the horse girl chose horses because she
that's
wants
right,
to
'cause
marry
she
a
loves
horse
horses.
when she's older.
Yes.
Girls
Girls got an
book is a
imagination.
trip,
I
you
love
guys.
it.
Yeah.
Right? There was always the one girl who was like really into horses.
I think she might be the real protagonist.
Yep.
Yeah,
She's like the only one who's not involved.
Yeah,
It's true.
this is true.
She's the one.
All she wants to do is just love a horse, man.
I was the horse girl in like 5th or 6th grade because
Yeah.
I rode horses, and
Yeah.
we were a special breed of child. I
Yeah.
can tell you that much.
A thoroughbreed.
Shirts,
Oh my goodness.
very
I'll go.
appropriate.
I'll go now.
So they're, doing all sorts of fun stuff, including they make a paper airplane that says, "I'm Blubber, fly me." I don't understand that, but
It's not even good.
right. Like,
I mean, they're children.
better.
Children are
Bad.
Yeah.
they're not creative in their witty insulting.
Yeah.
I don't know. So this establishes our protagonist pretty much as a jerk. And
Yeah.
of her classmates.
and willing to go along with
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Very much so.
The thing that struck me the most first is like in the introduction is just how much of a straight up sociopath Jill is, because I think the line that like really got me is the teacher sees them laughing, and she like calls on Jill and it's like, "Why are you laughing?" And Jill just does like she's cold as ice. And at one point she says that she was like internally, we get her narration, she was laughing not because it was funny but because she knew Wendy was watching her.
Yeah.
Like the lack of depth of emotion in Jill is terrifying. One of the first things that I think I messaged you that this book is Kids Bop American Psycho. Like this child does not have any regard for human feelings or people or anything. It's terrifying.
Which to an extent is a trait of children. Like your brain's not fully formed, your like empathy isn't fully formed. But also, dang.
Yeah, like she's at a whole other level she's operating at. Like just zero cares about anyone. It's rough.
And a lot of like internal monologue about how everyone else is stupid and lame. And
yeah, she's superior.
gosh.
She is Patrick Bateman. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it was most of the chapter a few times was just her complaining about why she didn't win this or why people weren't paying attention to her, and it was like it was very much like the Bateman scene with the business cards. Like it absolutely was.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
like,
yeah.
why can't they see how much better I am than everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
And my sweet Flint Sir costume.
like gold boots.
I mean, the gold boots were like the only thing I liked.
Yeah, I agree.
I was like,
Pretty
ooh,
good
you
list.
painted your boots gold? Awesome.
Pretty good
Yeah.
job.
So to be fair, we jump off the book with this protagonist. It's Halloween, so they're all like dressing up for school and they're doing like a costume contest. And Linda, Blubber, had just done her report on whales and talked about Flint Sirs. And so Jill, who we get to be in the brain of this whole book, dresses up like a Flint Sir for Halloween.
Yep. Oh,
like
yeah.
a normal, chill person does.
Like, oh, this is funny. I'm going to find a more intense way to, to torture this girl by being a Flint Sir.
Yes,
For Halloween.
Yeah.
kills well, probably not kills, they probably just come in after, but like strips the blubber off of the whales, and they're calling this girl Blubber. Like, this is some,
It's dark.
Yeah.
takes a real rough turn.
Yeah, and Jill's parents, her home life clearly is just like intensifying this.
Yes.
Her parents do not question this.
Nope.
Like,
You want to be a Flint Sir? Sure.
Flint Sir, where'd that come from?
There are a lot of
Strange.
times throughout this book where her parents have an opportunity to like have a great teachable moment or have a really like productive conversation with her, and they go, "Yeah, I'm sure it's fine."
Yep.
It's probably okay.
She is such a snot to her parents and to her brother.
Kenny,
her delightful brother.
He's amazing.
He's the best character in
Hands
the whole
down.
book. Like,
And he's
no
like,
contest.
I don't want to go trick or treating. I'm gonna stay home and hand out candy.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's wholesome.
Kenny is delightful. He dresses up as a witch. Like, it's amazing. He
With
smokes
goggles?
a cigar and goggles to be a witch. He just says fun facts all the time. Like, Kenny is the jam. Kenny's...
I feel like I might have kind of been Kenny.
I was definitely Kenny.
See that.
Like, let me put together a weird costume and give you all kinds of weird facts about stuff.
Yeah, and he's just nice to everybody. He's real chill, and it's great. And everybody treats him like garbage.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Jill.
Yep. And Jill rips on her parents constantly, on her mom especially.
Yes.
Like about her mom trying to quit smoking, or like what her mom's cooking or wearing, anything like that. And it's so it was drilled into my brain as a kid that you are not a brat. Like my mom did not take sass, and it really bothers her. And she thinks it's funny when I talk about this. That kids on TV today are like brats, and people think it's cute. Like they're being sassy
yeah.
and it's funny. It really bothers my mom. So she would tell us when we were kids, if we were being like snide or judgy or anything, she's like, stop it. You're being a brat. Just like shut it down. And I think that's what made me such a judgy human now in life. No, I just don't tolerate it. Like people being disrespectful. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
Well, and like not only are her parents just like real chill about how awful she is, but then they also have a nanny, Miss Sandemeyer, who immediately like at first sounded dope as hell, and then like the longer it went on, I was just like, why aren't you doing anything about this child? Like she's supposed to teach them French, but Jill always answers in English because she just doesn't want to speak. Like she doesn't. She knows the French, but she doesn't want to do it.
Yep. So I think that's what she flat out said. I don't want to take the time to figure out the words.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're lazy too.
Yeah.
Great.
The worst. The worst. I know I say that every time, you guys, but they're always the worst.
Always the worst. Getting bad. So Jill dresses up as a Flint Sir for this school costume contest.
Which she doesn't actually know what a Flint Sir looks like. She knows that a Flint Sir would wear like boots and carry a knife. That's
And a
all
big
she
sweater.
knows about them.
Yep.
Yeah, she like makes up a hat and puts dolphins on it because she can't find any pictures of whales. It's all a lot. I did definitely Google Flint Sirs, and there is not like a standardized outfit for Flint Sirs. So,
Yeah.
what up now, Jill?
It's not because it was a cool outfit. It was because she's a bully.
Right?
Yeah, this is true. Although there was also like there's a lot of questionable costume choices because there's also a throwaway line about how like a bunch of the kids dressed up like bums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And that was a costume for when you
She
were a
said,
kid.
like,
You dress up as a hobo.
Oh,
She
yeah.
said like 95% of the kids dressed up as bums.
yes,
And
It
then
was-
there was one big bird and like
a princess,
The princess.
and then the fried egg who won
Yeah.
a costume contest.
Yeah.
as a fried egg.
I mean, I would give an
Oh, yeah,
award to
fried
a fried
egg
egg.
all the way.
Totally, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? And then she decided to spray paint her boots gold for her Flint Sir costume, which I would have been torn a new one by my parents for like
same.
spray painting your
sure.
winter boots without
And it-
asking permission. Yeah.
And I believe that there is also another throwaway line about how they are brand new.
Yep,
Yeah.
there
Like,
absolutely is.
You just got these boots. And
And
you
her
spray
mom's
painted
just
them
like,
gold, which
"Is the paint
I
washable?"
kind of love.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe.
Did you check first?
Nope.
Maybe.
Don't care. Sure.
Mom pulls out another cigarette.
Right. Like, why do you think your mom is smoking so much?
Oh gosh.
So after she loses, she's so grumpy about this, and she's had her time to interact with her best friend Tracy Wu. They're both really into stamps.
Yes.
Something interesting and hilarious later. So she's
many
got her
stamps.
friends about those. And then the next day at school, we get into the bathroom scene. Which, okay, hold that. All right, everyone take a deep breath. We're going to go to a word from our sponsors first before we get into this.
Buckle
to the bathroom scene.
Yeah.
So we want to take a second to thank Sexy Hackers for this awesome studio and letting us come here and talk about our fun things every single day in producing these podcasts, and for providing these sweet T-shirts. Yes. I'm definitely the guy wearing the T-shirt to see the band that they're...
I mean, we've established we're not cool, so like, yeah.
Not cool. We were not. So, all right, hold on to your seats. We'll be back in just a second.
SexyHackers.com.
All right, and welcome back, everyone. We are diving into Judy Blume's Blubber, and specifically the first scene where we really establish that these children are not just some gentle teasing or lightly picking on each other.
Straight up evil.
This is some bad stuff. So we've got Linda, our poor girl, who's done a report on whales, and now the whole class is calling her Blubber. Mm-hmm. And
they latched on to this because she is chubby.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's heavier for a kid.
Our protagonist Jill talks about how she's fat, but there are other kids in the class that are way fatter, but we're gonna pick on her, right?
Yeah, it's clearly not really about that, but that's just the easy thing, because even later we see some of the other things they latch onto are not super rational or even super intense about the person, but they just whatever they can find, because when they talk about there's a Buck Wild scene where they weigh everybody. Mm-hmm. Buckle up for that.
Yeah.
And it's clearly not even that big of a difference. It's just what they latched onto.
Yeah. And that's what kids do. It's the one thing that's slightly different.
Yeah. And I think John Mulaney has a bit about that, about how children have a way of latching on to just the single specific insecurity that you have, and then just going to town on it.
Yes.
That's this book. This whole book is that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they really latch onto it. So Caroline and Wendy really lead the charge to trap Linda in the bathroom. They're calling her Blubber. They're shoving her around. They're threatening to strip her. And they're forcing her to call her Queen Wendy and curtsy for her. Mm-hmm. And they're just straight up assaulting her. Let's call it what it is.
Well, and Jill is dressed as a Flint Sir, so they say you're the Flint Sir, you have to strip her.
Yep.
And so she
Yep.
She, I believe, rips her shirt
all open, and
it is brutal, and it's long. It goes on for a bit.
Yeah, it's gratuitous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I will just continue to say about this book throughout this entire thing is it's overly gratuitous and unnecessary, and it just makes a point of torturing this girl, and then that's all.
We focus on the torture instead of the supposed moral lesson that we're supposed to be taking away from it. It is the torture porn of children's books.
It absolutely is.
If this book was a horror movie, it would be directed by Quentin Tarantino.
So that's
I'm going to say something very controversial.
Oh man,
that I hate Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, we're in agreement here.
I don't like his films.
I used to love him, and
Sorry.
then I was wait.
Controversial.
Nope, not a great thing. That's all right.
But I feel this is also this whole book is the origin story of a villain, and Jill is the villain. Her losing the costume contest kicks off this whole thing, because we go pretty much straight from that into this whole bathroom scene where before it was pretty at least regular child bullying. Every kid has kids that are a little bit mean, and then we pop off from there. Like, this is Joker, but for Jill.
Yeah.
It's Jilker. Directed by Todd Phillips, coming in 2022.
Oh, man. And so at this point, Linda's crying in the bathroom and doing
It's awful, yeah.
doing whatever they say just to get away, you know?
Right.
And it's like, oh, it's fine, blah, 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 blah.
If she would stand up for herself, we wouldn't
Right.
have to keep bullying her.
What?
That's like Jill goes real hard on that. Like,
She
well,
does.
there's nothing wrong with doing this because she's not standing up for herself, so she's bringing it on herself.
Yeah. It's
Holy cow.
It-
a lot. Which I think leads perfectly into our WTF moments for this first section of the book.
I feel like the WTF moments for the first section of the book are just all
The whole book.
bathroom.
yeah. Yeah. My notes, like, I was pretty specific in my notes up until that point, and then my notes for that whole section just say, "Excuse me?"
Yeah. It's a blur. It's an angry red blur at Judy Blume.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Judith, are you okay?
Like, what happened? Any of these? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bathroom, of course, was my big one, but I think I was really more shocked about her parents and how my WTF is that her parents do not seem to question anything that she does.
Yeah.
At any point. And I, reached out. I was like, generational thing, like parents just letting kids get away with this stuff. And to an extent, yes, I think we need to take into account that this book was originally written in the 1970s when it was first published, but it's been republished multiple times all the way up to 2014 with no changes.
Oh, wow.
Like, yep, it is. The reprints have come out. There's been no changes to it. I'm like,
Halloween party it.
yeah, exactly. I was like, isn't that the idea? Is like you get better with age, and we're like, hey, let's take the overall moral and like just update this. But no, not at all.
I feel like in order to edit this book, you would just have to take the whole book and just throw it directly into a trash can.
I
Like,
absolutely agree.
There's
You
nothing.
can't salvage
like,
this. You can't.
It's ostensibly supposed to be teaching children, like, not to bully or to, like, be empathetic towards each other. Because, I mean, like Sarah said, like, that is something you're developing as a child. You're not born with the ability to think about other people's feelings. And that was what stood out to me, kind of in the similar vein of just, as you were raised to, like, be very courteous and respectful, like, I definitely did have to struggle to, like, think about other people's inner worlds. That was not something that came naturally to me. And at least this book, I was reading it, I was like, well, damn, I wasn't like that. At least, like, it was more just like, it was very opaque to me versus straight up, like, Jill spends the whole book, like, projecting her own thoughts onto everybody else and in a very negative way of just everybody is inferior to her and, like, none of it matters. She's smarter than everybody. She's better than everybody. It's just like, okay, well, at least I wasn't at that level. Like,
I did have a moment of like, I didn't know any kids that acted like that. And then that like moment of panic of like, was I the kid that acted like that? And that's why I didn't know any kids that acted like that. But then I thought, if I was that kid, I wouldn't be asking myself that question.
yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
because there's zero self-reflection.
I would be Jill going, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm fine. Everyone is wrong, and I'm the one who's perfect. Like, her like sense of self is so bizarre.
It really
warped.
is.
It's very strong for that age too.
Yeah.
I questioned myself constantly as a child. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
before I say that, do I? Maybe.
Yeah, with Jill, there's no, like, at no point does she turn to anyone else for guidance or, like, reflection or feedback or anything. She's just like, I am Jill.
But also throughout the book, but starting, I think, when we kind of meet her teacher and meet her parents, anytime someone does go to an adult in this book with something like, anytime an adult in this book is presented with something that is not okay, they just kind of brush it off as like,
Yeah.
well, kids.
The adults are super dismissive in this book. They like practically want nothing to do with the children.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was Judy just like making it about like the kids and their interactions, and it was just easier to write the parents out as like people who have their own things and don't care.
Yeah.
But like, whoa, it's really disturbing in some scenes because these kids are just getting away with bullying and no one's questioning anything.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Well, and I wonder if the reason that we see adults doing that as like not okay is because is like generational. Like we are the children of people who were growing up in the 60s and 70s who did have adults that just kind of let anything happen. And so they turned around and were like, I am not going to let my children go through that.
Interesting.
And so like we grew up with a different expectation of like, if I go to an adult about something that's like clearly not okay, they're not going to just dismiss it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like every time an adult was introduced, I was like, yes, now someone will do something. And then no, they did not.
Yeah.
They never did anything. Not even a little.
Sarah, I think you're really spot on with that. We we actually had this discussion in my family on how, my mom, grew up with sisters and, they picked on each other and, did all sorts of goofy stuff. And so my mom was always, again, really strict about that of like, you do not tease other people, including your sister. That was specific. Like the sibling rivalry did not happen in our household. Like any sort of bickering or anything. She's like, stop it. That's your sister. You love each other. And she would like shut it down right away. And so we recently talked about this over Thanksgiving. It's January when this is airing, so it was a little bit back. So we talked about that, and she's like, I just want to make sure that you guys really felt that when we were growing up, and my sister and I are super close. I was like, yeah, we were not, there was no like slap fighting or anything as little kids. It was like, stop it, you love each other, give each other a hug, and you're like, okay, and you would, but yeah, and I think it's because in her generation, no one did anything, like, or her parents' generation.
So what I'm hearing is you need to write this book.
I need to
except
rewrite.
Not horrifying and terrible.
You know what? Actually, Mom, since you're a writer, do you want to take a crack at this? We actually co-write quite a bit of my comedy stuff.
Nice.
Yep. There you go.
Done.
Secret.
Plan.
I know. And she listens to this.
So that
She
the
says,
next generation of children can have a better example than this.
Right. Oh my gosh.
It is interesting to me that they've re-released it so many times without any changes, considering how the conversation, like the cultural conversation around bullying, has changed so much in the 50 years. Was this early
1974.
70s?
Yep.
45 years since this was published.
Yep.
Originally.
Yep. So they did like a couple reprints in like the late 70s, early 80s, expected that that's pretty much the same. And then like 2008 and 2014, which that's what blew my mind. I'm like, what is your...
Where was anybody while you were doing this? Nobody was like, maybe we should just take a quick peek at this. Oh God, like,
yeah, make sure this all makes sense still.
Yeah. Nope, not even a little.
Not any of those. So I had actually read this as a kid, but totally blacked it out. I didn't remember. I remember that I had read a book about kids being picked on, but had no recollection of any of it. And I think because when I was a kid, I read it and I was like, oh, that seems mean, but not that bad. Probably because I grew up in a school where bullying was really common, and it was pretty terrible. So it's like, yep, pretty standard stuff, sadly. I don't know. How do you guys feel like reading this as adults? Because you guys all just read it for the first time when I forced this down your brain hole.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Hey, everybody gets one. How do you guys feel like it's really colored like your view and changed how you think about these things, or looking back on your own childhood and remembering this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the one thing I mentioned earlier is I did definitely feel slightly better about child Andrea's like kind of issues with theory of mind, because at least I wasn't actively torturing people. And I was bullied a little bit. I was a weirdo. I started out at a Catholic school, and then I transferred to a middle school where I had like 2 people that I knew, and everybody else had established friend groups. So like I got gum spit in my hair and like things like that. But I was just reading this. I was like, well, again, wasn't that bad. And just like the difference, I think, again, it comes down to generation of the difference of how it's presented and how it's handled. And the hierarchy is still definitely, I feel like, pretty accurate, but it's just evolved over time to the different behaviors and the different things people latch on to. Because like mine was like, I was kind of like a goth kid. So I got it a lot of like, and it was around Columbine. So I got a lot of like the murdery things, which no, but it's wild like how the behaviors are still the same. It's just people have changed what they jump on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. I bet.
I was fortunate to my twin sister, who was our guest last month, has kind of her whole life been a like kind of universally liked, kind, sensitive, empathetic person. Like her whole life, she like sprang from the womb as this like very kind, empathetic person, and was always very well liked. And so I kind of got to like ride on that wave.
Nice.
Even when I was a brat, like she liked me, so so other people liked me, and I'm actually very glad because I was a child who, like, my childhood diary is boring and also like a little wild in how much I wrote about. I'm sure that everyone hates me and they're just pretending, or they're only being nice to me because they're friends with my sister. Like, I had a lot of anxiety around that as a child. And so I feel like reading this book would have just made me terrified that if someone, like, if people secretly don't like me anyway, because my brain, if people secretly don't like me anyway, like, they could do all these terrible things
any moment.
And there's nothing stopping them.
Yep. And they will not feel bad. And no one will ever learn anything.
I just feel like I would have just been terrified all the time.
Yeah.
Nice. Bianca, what about you?
Yeah. So I have a lot of experience with bullying. I was homeschooled kid, went into a very like prestigious, rich, small, white bread America town from a poor single parent family. And when you do not have the funds, when you look different, you act different, it was really hard. I remember 5th grade was my first year going back into school. And I had like crooked teeth, I had glasses, my hair was frizzy, I was like a little plus size, and they just like had a field day. Luckily, I don't know where it comes from, but I've always just kind of had like a strong confidence that I show people, so they weren't able to really like grasp on too much. But everything from like guys like fake asking me and my like girlfriends out.
Don't do this.
Yeah,
People,
such a
humans,
thing.
don't do this.
I like saw a post on Facebook a while back that was like, some of you have clearly never been asked out by like guys as a joke. And I was like, I totally forgot that even happened. But that was like my entire 5th grade experience. And like I had braces and it was a mess. So this book, if I had read this book at that age, it would have just made things way worse. Yeah. Way worse.
Yep. So I think this book is the point where it almost like gives kids ideas.
Yeah, it presents it all as just very normal and very like, this is what you should expect.
And presents going to an adult as something that is not going to change anything anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So many great messages.
If you stand up to the bully, they will start bullying you.
Yep.
And
you bet.
There's so much to unpack, you guys.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into even more of that next week, Wednesday, on Who Let Me Read This. We'll follow Jill's path to the dark side. It's rocky. Yikes. Yes. Thank you so much to our panel for joining us today, Miss Andrea Roedel-Schroeder, our special guest, Miss Bianca Brandolino, and Miss Sarah Wallisch, our co-producer here. My name is Laura Holterman. Please make sure that you guys check out the other podcasts on the Sexy Hackers Network. There are some really cool other ones out there. The All Arcadians, No Dice, Turn to Page Fun. I love that t-shirt design.
It's so cute. Fun shirt.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a children's show that probably is No, this is very different from their logo. It reminds me of Reading Rainbow.
Yeah, absolutely.
The logo
It's
reminds me
definitely
of Reading Rainbow,
different
but
enough.
it's very different.
In the feel of it.
It's very
Absolutely.
different. Like the experience of looking at it.
Spiritual success.
The magic that
Awesome.
you associate with it.
It's just because it has a rainbow on it.
Awesome. And then make sure to like and subscribe and leave those 5-star reviews and comments. We would
Yes.
love to hear from you.
There's a bell down there.
Something
Ring it.
down here.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Yep.
I went the wrong way.
I go the wrong way.
I'm not sure.
This way.
If I,
Awesome.
Oh God.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week.
Just do the single ladies.
sexyhackers.com Stream Team!